Welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm your host, Tristen Stawicki. Think of me as your pragmatic shaman bestie. Join in with other high vibe, lovely people as I unravel spiritual ideas to help create change and growth in your life. I cover a variety of spiritual topics, sharing knowledge to meet you wherever you are in your journey. As a shaman, astrologer, and human design reader, I help you understand how to make informed decisions and incorporate different modalities using discernment and your own intuition. Today, you will gain powerful shamanic healing tools you can use to incorporate spiritual practices in non-traditional ways. Whether you're just beginning or need a knowledgeable best friend with the next phase of your journey, I'm here to help. Stay tuned. Musings and Modalities starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm Tristen Stawicki, your pragmatic shaman bestie, and I'm thrilled to discuss today's topic, ghostwriting and using AI with ethics, with my incredible guest and who's an author, a former philosophy professor, Emily Crookston. Emily is an award-winning business book ghostwriter, so there's no one better to talk on this topic, and developmental editor as well as being an author. As the owner of the Pocket PhD, she specializes in helping founders and experts and business owners write a book that sells. Emily, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Tristan. It's great to be here. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Me too, especially because my experience with ghostwriters has been pretty non-existent until I met you, honestly. And, it's something whispered about, seen on Real Housewives shows, talked about, some royalty
That's right.
perhaps has had some ghostwriters. And
That's right.
when, when we met and we had such an inspiring conversation, I found myself almost wanting to rebrand ghostwriting, right? As what you do really lends yourself more to other terms. So let's stick with the term we have just to keep it easy for our audience. If you could really define for us what a ghostwriter does.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. I'm with you. I want to rebrand it as well. Let's make this a project. Yeah, so I am a ghostwriter. So what I do is people come to me with an idea for a business book. So I don't write memoirs for people. I only work on books that are designed to kind of help you market your business as a business owner, or thought leaders. I work with, generally just business owners and thought leaders. And you come to me with an outline, and I look at that outline. We take that to be a working outline, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing's written in stone. And then I meet with you once a week, and we talk through different pieces of the book. I do the discipline of writing, so I might spend 10 or 20 hours working on your book during the week. You spend a couple of hours reading what I've written and making edits, or having questions for me, and then we talk about it, and we work through the editing process together.
That's beautiful. And it really lends itself to being a writing coach, right? Because your
Yeah.
process, we don't want to speak for all ghostwriters, but your process is highly collaborative, right? There's extra special
Yeah.
kind of sauce you bring to it.
That's right. It's really collaborative. I kind of differentiate myself from a writing coach because I think of coaches as where, you're doing the writing and I'm kind of there to give you homework, or I'm there to sort of hold your hand and keep you accountable as you're doing it. Whereas with ghostwriting, I'm doing like 80% of the writing for you, but those ideas are not mine. They're yours. So in the end, my biggest goal is to make sure this book sounds like you, feels like you're comfortable talking about it as if it's yours. You have full ownership over it. So my process is designed to make sure that that's how you feel in the
Mhm.
end. Yeah.
Yeah, which is beautiful. And we talked about even the term book doula, which is so beautiful because it
Yeah.
really is a labor of love, right? Bringing a
Right.
book that people have had in their heart and in their mind, or it's just something that has come to them
Yeah.
recently, but they can't let go of.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. And it's really hard when you're running a business to find the time to write a book, right? We're writing in the cracks and crevices of our businesses when we're even writing a LinkedIn post. So to imagine writing a 40,000 word book, that's a lot for a lot of people. And so I feel really privileged when I can come in and be that kind of megaphone mouthpiece for you, in that way, because it's much easier to talk about your book in a short amount of time and let me kind of play with the ideas and expand them in certain ways. And it's fun for me because I get to learn about a brand new idea every time I start a book. So I love it.
No, it's beautiful. And I really love kind of your process because I'm someone that when I kind of go in my little hole, my little cave, I don't find I'm as full brilliance, full, I need that collaboration. I need that spark to bounce
Yeah.
off of.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes when we think about writing, we go into like English 101 mode. You know, we're writing a 5 paragraph essay all of a sudden, for a chapter. And that kind of writing generally doesn't connect with an audience, right? It's got to be more conversational. And so that's why a collaborative process can really work for a lot of people because it's easier to be conversational when you're actually having a conversation and then we just write it down. So
That's
yeah.
that's really cool. And you did the hard thing, right? And you wrote your own book, which is
Yeah.
incredible. And I love how in your book you speak to how challenging writing is and to really focus on getting a draft out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Um, I also really love your take on, art overall, because so many people put like writing on this pedestal, right? And
Yeah.
it is beautiful and incredible. And there's a discipline to it, just like we go to the gym, just like we do different things. And so I'd love to speak kind of how you handle having discipline on days when you don't feel like writing, when every word is
Yeah.
a chore and you're like, who wrote this? This isn't me. I don't use those words, if you just kind of
Yes.
talk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really tough challenge. I talk a lot about writer's block and think a lot about writer's block. I have said in the past, I may have said it in the book as well. I don't really believe in writer's block. Yes, I do say it in the book because I talk about how it's like Tinkerbell, if you don't believe in it, then it's not there, that kind of a thing. Because I think with writer's block, it's usually ideator's block. It's usually because you haven't done enough thinking about what you're trying to write. So if you're in that place, you might need to go for a walk and just think a little bit more before you start putting fingers to keyboard. And I'm never shy about that. Like personally will have like maybe a really productive writing day on a client's book where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting like 2,500 words an hour or something. Maybe not that fast. That's a lot, but I'm getting a lot of words out. And I've written maybe 10 hours that day or 8 hours that day, and I'm feeling really good about myself. And then the next day I come back and I'm like, okay, let's get this momentum, keep this momentum going. And usually the next day it's like, not there. The magic is gone, and really what it is my brain is tired. I've kind of emptied out what I had, and then I've got to go and fill my brain back up before I can sit down and write again. So one of the things I like to recommend to people if they're writing their own books is to have a weekly word count goal rather than a daily word count goal, because you're going to have days where it's easy to hit your goal and you're going to have days where it's not. And instead of feeling down about yourself, you can say, okay, well, I don't have to write today. It's perfectly fine not to write every day. And maybe today what you need is a walk in the woods, and that's fine, because writing is an inspirational thing. I always talk about the symbiotic relationship between you and your idea chose you. It chose you to come into the world. It chose you as the doula to bring it into the world. And you have to respect that relationship. Sometimes the muse is gone, or the ideas just aren't coming. And forcing it never works for me. I've certainly done that when I've been on a deadline and, oh, I've got to get these words, I just got to get the thing written for this person. And it never comes out the best. It's never as clear, it's never as connecting as other things that I've written. So I found that it's usually just best to step back and wait.
No, completely understand that. And writing has changed as a tool overall. Like people, for instance, you mentioned a walk in the woods. Some people will take a voice memo, right? And just be
Yeah.
like, here's what's coming
Yeah.
to me. Like, let me just get this out. I don't want to be in front of a computer. It actually limits me as
Yeah. That's right. You can't really control when those ideas come. Sometimes I'm in the shower and I get my best ideas, right? So yeah, if you work really well making a voice memo, go to town. That's a great way to get your ideas out. Yeah, whatever works, don't feel constrained to sit at your desk for some hours a day. And that's another reason why I suggest a word count instead of like time. Sometimes people set benchmark times for them. I'm going to spend 2 hours on my book every day. But 2 hours for me can be looking out the window and reading Googling things and not actually writing some stuff and deleting it. So it's better for me to say, okay, it was a count. It's a word count that I'm trying to hit.
No, that makes total sense. And I also want to talk about how not every idea should be a book, right? So I think there are things that can be
Yeah,
impactful in a LinkedIn post or, in some other
absolutely.
format, even a
Mhm.
podcast interview. So
Yeah,
would love to
yeah,
kind of get your take on in your vetting process, how you're going through, and don't give everything away, but just some key highlights of, how you go through and you're working with someone
yeah.
to be like, this actually has enough there to make a book.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's hard to know from the beginning. Even talking to somebody, it's hard for me to know how much meat is actually there in the idea. Um, but one thing that I always keep in mind, and this is why I support like writing a fast first draft, because you can figure out pretty quickly whether you have enough content if you just put your fingers and start writing it out. If you have in mind, okay, I have 8 chapters in my outline. I know this book needs to be 40,000 words, so that's roughly 5,000 words a chapter. And you start writing a chapter and you only get to like 2,500 words and you're tapped out and there's nothing more to say. You might start rethinking, like, do you have a full book here? Maybe it's a mini book. Mini books are great. You could easily write a 50-page book, if that's what the idea, if that's the container of the idea. It's all about, what size is your container. But you can also expand on 2,500 words. If you have 2,500 words and you're like, oh yeah, I could write more. I just need to do a little more research, or I need to think a little bit more expansively about this one section, right? I often find that I definitely add words when I'm editing. Editing jobs almost never delete words for me unless that's like my goal, and I'm like, this is too long, it needs to be cut. Um, so you don't have to panic if you're thinking, oh, I have a book idea, but it's not right quite getting there. So that's one side of the coin, but the other side is I do think you need to be honest with yourself about, am I writing a book? Would this be better as a series of blog articles, or would this be better as some articles that I could pitch to Harvard Business Review or Fast Company or something? There's lots of ways to get ideas out in the world. Often a really good process is to do a talk, do a workshop, do a keynote. And it's a good way to test out your idea and see how much it resonates with an audience. And then you can say, oh, this could be a book idea. You can start small and then grow. I often like to do that process. Some people like to go from big to small, like, I'm going to take my book and I'm going to break it all into articles and LinkedIn posts and things like that. And that could be awesome as well. But I find it often is easy if you're like, have a nugget of an idea and then you can just kind of chew on it and play with it a little bit, do some little talks about it, put out some LinkedIn posts, and see how things land. Often the way to figure out if you have a book idea is to gauge the response that you're getting from other people. So any way you can get some feedback, in an official or not official way is a great way to test your idea.
Definitely, especially if it's contrarian, right? Especially if it hits people and wrong, and
Yes.
you're like, oh, there's something there that we need to dive into a little.
Yeah, that's for me, that's like the thing. Like, oh, we could talk about this for days because look, the conventional wisdom says all of this stuff, and you can spend some time talking about that, and then you can say, but here's why, here's what they're missing, here's what I think, and yeah, that can be a great way to get to your book idea too.
That's awesome. So I'd love to move into AI and write it.
Yeah,
So talk
yeah.
to us about how you're using AI, where it's been helpful, where it's not helpful.
Yeah, this is a fun topic. So, a friend of mine just told me recently that, it was like I think it was a ChatGPT survey about how many people are using AI and what they're using it for, and it was like 36% are using it for writing or something like that. But that number had actually decreased from, I don't know, 2 years ago when they did the same survey. So we were kind of chatting about why it might be that fewer people are using AI for writing than they were maybe 2 years ago. And I think part of the reason is that often I hear my friends and I talk to them about how they're using AI in writing, and they're like, it just doesn't sound like me. It's just not capturing my voice. And people are getting wise, right? We're starting to pick up on the little patterns that AI uses, right? It uses M dashes too much, right? Like there are these certain things that little quirks that it does. And so people, even my clients, when I use AI with my writing clients, and I have been doing that since about January of this year, I've started using it. Even my clients are like, oh yeah, that's an AI, little pattern that it does. Like, let's make sure we're taking those out. So I think that AI is a really great tool for expanding your thinking and expanding on the skills that you have already with writing. But I think it's very important that you make sure your voice is in there first. So rather than going to AI and saying, okay, AI, I want to write a book about X. Here's my outline. Let's write chapter one. Like, here's the title, chapter one. Write it for me. Maybe you've got some bullet points, right? You're going to get a very generic chapter. It will absolutely write you a chapter with just a few bullet points and a title. But it won't sound like you. It won't feel like you. And that little voice that's coming in saying, hey, you're cheating is going to get louder and louder. But it's better if you write whatever you have, stream of consciousness, just draft, just sit down one day and write whatever you have about that chapter. Then you can drop it into Claude, or I prefer Claude. Claude is my preferred AI. Drop it into ChatGPT, drop it into Claude, and say, okay, Claude, here's where I need this chapter to be better. I want to open with the story, and here are the bones of the story. Like, write the story for me, and it can really expand on the ideas that you have. But remember, you're like the orchestrator, right? You're the conductor of the orchestra. AI is simply a tool. It annoys me that we call it artificial intelligence, because it doesn't have its own intelligence. It's really just predictive text, and that's what we have to keep in mind. It's just simply predicting the next word in a string. So if you don't put your own personality in, it's not going to connect with your audience, and you're going to feel that as you're reading it, as you're trying to edit it. So I always recommend like using as much of yourself as you can, and where you get stuck, AI can add a little, can help you get unstuck. You could ask questions like, should I do this or should I do that? And it'll kind of talk you through the possibilities. It's not a great critic. I wish it were better as a critic. I wish I could put in and say, oh, I'm thinking about this direction or this direction. What is the best? It's not gonna tell you that. It's gonna say, well, if you want these things, you should go this way. And if it's this, then it's not a very good moderator in that sense. And it's not going to challenge anything you say. It's going to say, oh, that's perfect every time you ask it to do something. So yeah, just, I think if we keep these tools in their place, then they can be very helpful. They're really, really dumb assistants.
No, that's very true. And also when
Yeah.
thinking about like written something and you're like, uh, tell me the opposite point of view. Like, what are
Yeah.
the key points? And you could pull out some threads, to then flesh out kind
Right.
of writing. Like, that's a beautiful way to use it that feels in alignment.
That's right. That's right. It's good at summarizing things. It's good at organizing things. If you feel something's disorganized, asking it to organize for you can be really helpful. Or what's missing? What can I add? It'll give you a list of things you can add, and then you can pick and choose. You can decide what you want to do. You just have to be really careful about any research that it's doing. And it will throw in, people call them hallucinations. It will throw in hypothetical examples all day long, and you'll be like, that sounds great. Is that real? No, it's not real.
Oh.
You have to go and look and do your own fact checking. You have to be very careful. And I have this challenge with clients. Sometimes it'll throw in, like with a client I was working on her book the other day, and it just made up this whole beautiful story about how when she was 9 years old, she had this newspaper and she took it around to the neighbors and get them to donate money to her. And I was like, well, it sounds like something she would have done. Like, did she? And I had to ask, I like, where did you get this story? Oh, I made it up. It'll tell you. Like, okay, well, that's great. So I have to go back to the client and say, well, this is a great story, but we should replace it with something real, something that you actually did. And it does the same with statistics. You just can't trust any of the facts that it gives you.
No, that makes sense, especially the ethics piece, right? Sure, it'd be easier, but
Right.
let's have integrity. If we're putting a book out into the world or any content, your values
That's
have to show.
right. That's right. And ethics is a really important point because, I talked about cheating. A lot of people think of it as cheating. No, I'm going to write my whole book myself. There's no way I'm using AI. And I can have respect for that because there are a lot of challenges with AI. But it is a tool that can really just speed up the boring parts of the writing, right? And there are these parts that are hard, and AI can really help us make that part easier. And so I just think, why not use it? But absolutely have ethics around it. I have really strict guidelines that I feed in as instructions when I'm using AI. I ask it not to use biased language. I ask it not to make these kinds of assumptions about the reader and these kinds of things. The other way I really like to use it is to say, okay, what would my reader is this, describe the reader. What would they say about this section or this chapter, And it'll give you a bunch of really nice things to think about, in relation to editing and making it connect better with your reader. So it's really good as a thought partner in that way, and in putting yourself, helping you put yourself in the shoes of your reader, which can be hard for us as just human beings with our brains. Yeah.
Especially most books, and I would say most coaching or guidance overall is you're thinking about the you from months ago, years ago, right? The version of you that no
Right.
longer is who you currently are because you want to help
Right.
them, you have additional knowledge. And so to be
That's it.
back in those shoes is like really, really challenging when you're like, well, I know all of this now. I've embodied it
Yeah.
for decades, perhaps.
It's very hard when you're trying to write as you and then zoom out and be the reader. Yeah, but you can drop that information in AI one time, and then you can ask it what it thinks, and it will stay in the same character, in a way that you can't. So yeah, it's helpful that way.
That's beautiful. As we wrap up, I really wanted to highlight and discuss really the beautiful magic of writing. We've talked about in a few different ways, having
Yeah.
discipline, using different tools, but ultimately you are helping your clients realize their dreams, right? That perhaps they've
Yeah.
had since they were children. So do you have a
Mhm.
favorite story or story to share that really captures this?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I worked with a parenting coach on a book. She was one of the best projects. Like, I really felt a mind meld with her. I like to think of it that way. If I picked up her book today, I think if I read a paragraph, I wouldn't know if I wrote that paragraph or she did, because we just worked really well in flow together. But she had an idea for a book for a long time, and she was just stuck because she didn't have the time to do the book, right? But she had been gaining so much knowledge through the work that she was doing every day. And it was just so much fun to like mine her brain for that information, which was there and just not out in the world. I always talk about how, you are an expert. You don't need to write a book to call yourself an expert. It's not, some people treat it as a credential, right? I'm not an expert until I write a book, but it's not like that. You're already an expert, but your expertise might not be visible. And the book is the way to just embody that, make that information visible for other people. Your book is the container of your wisdom, and I just love being a part of that process of bringing that out of people.
No, that's beautiful, especially when you're perhaps trying to do it on your own or kind of work through things, figuring out when it's done, right? Because a book could be edited forever,
Yeah.
it could be tweaked
Yes.
forever, right? And it's
Yes.
like, no, 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 this is actually, we are complete in this container. I've gotten what I needed from this healing
Yeah.
process, and this is
Right.
good enough,
Yes.
right? So if you could talk a
Mm.
little bit about how you figure out when a book is good enough to kind of get out.
Yes, this is a big challenge, and I think that the people who are successful at this are the people who think of their books as starting a conversation. It's
Mhm.
not the end. It's not the end all be all of everything you have to say about this subject. It's just the start of a conversation. And I think that can often take the pressure off. I worked with a client and we rewrote her last chapter about 5 times. And, at a certain point, I just had to say, look, it's not, I don't know what idea of perfection you have in mind here, but this is great. This is really good enough. We've rewritten it 5 times. It's not going to get much better. We could keep rewriting it for years if you want, but that's not the goal. The book only, is helpful for you and your readers once it's out in the world. So you gotta pull the trigger. You gotta put it out there.
Oh, I love that so much. The way you approach writing, the level of collaboration you have is just exceptional. And I'm so excited for us to continue to have conversations, hopefully
Yeah,
work together in the future. But where
love
can the
to.
audience find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, which is thepocketphd.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you there. You can find me at Emily Crookston on LinkedIn. And those are the most most important places to find me.
Definitely. And sign up for her newsletter. It is exceptional. Like, I don't star people's newsletters and like save them in their own
Oh,
folder. And I'm like, no, these are good. I'm immediately taking like the
oh,
prompts you send. It's so good. It's so helpful.
amazing. Love
Yeah,
it.
because
Thank you
I
so
feel like,
much.
yeah, of course. No, I feel like people can take immediately kind of what we've talked about with AI today and be like, oh, okay, well, should I write a book? I have an idea. And it's like Emily has a
Yeah,
whole like newsletter set up where you have the prompts. If
that's
you want to
right.
talk through that kind of flow a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I encourage everybody to go to AI and start playing with a book idea if you have one. It's great for helping you with even with an outline, my process with the AI is I like to get 3 outlines going with AI, and so I can look at them and compare them, and then the really key thing that I've realized is to also do a narrative arc. So, it's great to look at an outline, and sometimes you look at it and you're like, "Okay, it could be a book, I don't know." But when you get that arc, it'll give you a narrative arc, which is like the start of the book, and the transformation, and then the ending, and that can give you a better picture. So you could look at a few different narrative arcs. Oh, if I want this book to be more educational, what does it look like? If I want this book to be more practical, what would that look like? And play around with it a little bit so you have some kind of starting point.
Oh, that's so helpful. Thank you so much for all of this wisdom you've shared today and for these conversations.
Yeah.
And thank you to our audience so much for watching Musings and Modalities with me, your pragmatic shaman bestie. Tune in the second and fourth Thursdays of each month at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern for more fabulous episodes. I've recently launched a free 3-week challenge designed to help you step into your most authentic leadership, where you'll receive weekly guided prompts that move you toward greater alignment and impact. You can sign up at musingsandmodalities.com. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Musings and Modalities with me, Tristen, your pragmatic shaman bestie. For more powerful healing tools, join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. I cover a variety of topics to meet you wherever you are at on your spiritual journey. Learn techniques to work with pendulums, past life healing, astrology, and more. Please share the show and subscribe for more guidance from your pragmatic shaman bestie at musingsandmodalities.com.